like to welcome you all to Automate. Thanks for joining us. Today's panel is comprised of some of the top integrators in North America. I would like to go through and have each one of them introduce themselves to you briefly. And also, I think all of them are actually exhibiting here at the event. So if you've got a booth, be sure to mention your booth number as you're plugging through. So we're going to start off first with Corwin Carson from Acieta.
Okay, I'm Corwin Carson. I'm the President and Chief Commercial Officer for Acieta. My background, I'm 24 years, all industrial automation from both the component side and then the system integration side. We do have a booth here today. It is B1300. We have a few different pieces of equipment there and some training cells if you want to barrel race with our training cells and see if you can win an award. So thank you all for being here.
Okay. And next we have the newly appointed CEO of Wauseon Machine, Mr. Joe Gemma.
Again, Joe Gemma. Actually, I've been in the industry a long time. We like to joke that Fred Flintstone and I went to school together. Certainly, I'm lucky to lead a wonderful team at Wauseon. We're an integrator. We actually booth number 3500, so certainly stop in. We, again, use the different types of technology to try to help solve your challenges in your manufacturing. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everybody. I'm Paul Kramer. I lead the sales team at JR Automation. We have booth number 3213. Come by and see us there. You'll see you can play blackjack against the robots and win an engraved chip if you can manage to do that. I've been in the industry for almost as long as Joe, about 39 years, and in all sorts of manufacturing, engineering, commercial roles, and now leading the sales team for JR. We have about 2,000 employees. Most of us based in North America. We have manufacturing locations in Europe and Asia as well. Come by and see us. We can talk more.
Okay. Craig Savalaggio.
All right. Craig Savalaggio with Applied Manufacturing Technologies. We're a system integrator just north of Detroit here locally. Been in business 35 years. And pleasure to be here today with this elite team of people that want to show you how to get automated, how to start, some common misconceptions, and how to adopt the technology. So been in the industry 23 years in a variety of different roles and proud to serve as current president.
Okay. And I'm Stu Shepard, and president of Shepard Solutions. I've been involved in the automation industry for about 46 years, starting as a customer and working my way up through several OEM manufacturing roles and working with several integrators. Today we're going to talk about being new in the integration business and some of the key things to pay attention to as you get started on your journey of automation. And with that, we'd like to start with Carson and talk about what does the customer journey look like for you when you first work with a company that's trying to consider how to get involved in automation?
Sure. Great question, obviously, and something that I think will lead to a number of additional conversations as we discuss these topics. But first of all, customer journey, right? Obviously, I think that defines it. It's all about the customer, all about the end user. And the second word, journey, everyone in the custom automation business knows that it will be a journey. And if you are new to it, you want to enter it with that understanding that inevitably things will go right, things will go wrong. It will be a journey for sure, and one that you can enjoy. So I think two things come to mind that are kind of perhaps most important is to truly understand where that customer is on their journey. Are they brand new to automation? Are they fully automated? Are they somewhere in between? And so that's kind of layer number one. And then the second one is what is the end goal? And I think the phrase would be expectation alignment is what leads to success. So the scope, of course, defining that scope, understanding what you want to accomplish, making sure that both parties are very clear on what that looks like, that is what will lead to success.
And how do you prefer customers communicate that to you? There's obviously conversations that you can have, but is it important to actually write that information down?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. So one, FaceTime, of course, comes to mind, right? And by FaceTime, I mean plant floor time. I mean, true understanding of the customer's business. That and one great idea, of course, is the development of a matrix along that journey. So really to kind of clearly define in writing, not only where you are today, but where you want to be, and to help break that down into as many categories as possible with, of course, the guidance of your system integration partner.
And Joe, how do you tell if a customer is really ready to automate? Because in some cases, they may not have any robots at all in their plant and may never have worked with an integrator before. How do you help them get started to understand where to get going?
Great question. Thanks. One thing I think we would all tell you to caution a little bit, if this is the beginning of your journey and you're looking for support and help from somebody like us, don't try to boil the ocean. Try to identify a smaller, simpler opportunity with maybe some, defined processes, and then look at those processes and, as Cohen said, kind of set up those KPIs, measure what that looks like today, look at the tools, look at the people, look at the data, and start as that baseline, and then start to see where that goes. And I think you also said about the goals for the company. How does it align with the company goals? Are you looking for more productivity? Are you looking for better quality? Are you looking for less scrap rate? There's a bunch of things that might be more relevant to the company in a broader sense. So take a look at it from that perspective, where that value is in the company's overall goals and objectives.
Yeah, right. And we talk a lot about industrial standards and safety. Comes up frequently in our marketplace. And we've had a very good safety record, but part of that's from planning and understanding the standards. Paul, how does JR Automation help companies understand what the standards are and how to live within the standards, but also not be trapped by bureaucratic regulations and other issues that slow things down?
Sure, great question. Obviously, safety is, I think, everybody's values chart, whatever's on the wall, safety is right on top. And so it's important as you enter into the automation space to work with an integrator that really understands the potential of the equipment everything that helps this equipment make good product at high speed or whatever after also may have the potential to injure a person. So there are a plethora of safety protocols that are there, and it's part of the integrator that you choose to help you navigate that path. The way Stu said, so that yes, we're keeping operators safe, but we're not so constrained that we're unable to perform the tasks in a meaningful way. So it really comes down to the experience of the integrator that you're working with. At JR Automation, we have specific safety reviews. I'm sure all of these organizations have that. It's important. And we specifically review the designs to make sure they're safe and balancing cycle times and speeds with safety.
An important thing worth mentioning is the A3 is right now in the process of releasing an updated robotic standards for safety. And we've better defined what collaborative robots and collaborative applications are, which has been a confusion in the past. Because you can make industrial robots collaborative and collaborative robots in industrial applications. So the key is to pay attention to the details in that.
Hey, Sue, can I add one point to that, by the way?
Sure.
Great point about the risk assessment. And we will do that as integrators, but keep in mind, ultimately, you're responsible for that safety also. So the system we put on your floor has been vetted for that risk assessment. If you modify that, first of all, you're responsible anyway, but if you modify it, make sure you do your homework and understand what that risk is once you make those modifications, because you are ultimately responsible for your employees' safety when you put an automation system in.
That's right.
Craig, when's the best time to do the automation assessment from a safety perspective?
Yeah, I think everybody here, what you're hearing is partnerships and education, right? You're working with an integrator partner to guide you along the way. There's consensus standards that are out there, but they can be intimidating. And what we found is the risk assessment isn't a piece of paper at the end of the project to get a sign off on. It's inherently how you design the system to be inherently safe, so that way your operators can still use the equipment, your maintenance people can still maintain the equipment, the folks that actually have to interact with it every day. And so that's part of what the integrator is trying to understand. They're trying to right size the type of company, the culture, ultimately the end goal as far as performance metrics, why are you automating in the first place? But at the end of the day, that operator has to be able to maintain that equipment and navigate it and have ease of use in the entire system to be able to culturally adopt that. So risk assessment for us starts right at the beginning. It's part of the project kickoff. It's even as part of the quoting process, because it ultimately depends on the types of components you're going to design into your automated system. So right at the beginning, and it should be something that started right at the kickoff of the project.
Great. So many of us have seen YouTube videos that show fantastic robot applications, and you wonder, are they really real? So how do we help customers understand the approach of what's out there and what's really available, and maybe as far as even try it and buy it or get good examples from your companies to see what can be accomplished? Anybody want to start?
Well, first of all, here's a great place right here at the show.
Yeah, there you
Walk
go.
around the show. And again, I mentioned about doing your homework even here. Look at the technology, talk to people that have the same types of technology and ask them the same questions so you can really compare to understand what those differences are between the technologies and how to take value out of that. As far as all of us here, we certainly want to try to help you through that process, but the OEM manufacturers are certainly part of that process and part of your selection criteria.
I would agree. You got all kinds of vision technology, you got software, understanding, use cases that are in the field. But again, to Joe's point, talk to the folks that have these things in production and have real life examples. Easy sometimes at the show you can have demonstrations, but the fact is that has to run in your manufacturing environment 24/7.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that exact point, agree with everything, but also note that your specific application, I want to go back to what Corwin said at the beginning, and I think Joe seconded it. It all comes down to unified expectations. All frustration in life, I think, goes back to mismatched expectations, even at home for guys like me. But anyway, understanding, what those expectations are, and we offer, and I imagine the other integrators here do as well, the ability to do proof of principles, where we study and we prove out, because nothing against anybody at a show, but we've had months to prepare these stands and what they do, start mixing some variation in there and find out what happens. So it's really important to work with somebody who can help you understand for your application what are the risks, what are the fault points possibly, and work through those together.
And maybe just one point to add, there also are a number of tools like digital twins, 3D simulations. It's come a long way, right? You think years of the past, it's a 2D drawing, it's a napkin sketch for that matter, but now a lot of technology has advanced that would allow you to see what that process would be, literally down to milliseconds, if it were to kind of come to fruition. So.
And to Stu's point, because that's a really valid point, there's animations and there's simulations. So be careful of the difference there. Animation kind of shows you kind of the YouTube pictures, but simulation is really simulating your process. So you can really get a visual of what your application looks like in that 3D world of a simulation. So be careful to recognize the difference.
And I'll throw in a pro tip here too, is ask your integrator to show you data of their simulations and reality to see how does it really go.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So related to the idea of reality, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how cool the application is, it matters, does it make money? Yeah. Is it financially feasible? What are the guidelines that you try to use, or what are the suggestions you use for customers to try to understand what's the right value, what's the right way to calculate return on the investment for a big automation program?
Yeah, a lot of times people just talk about ROI, but it's really understanding, safety mitigation, injury. You look at all the factors involved: increased throughput, increased productivity, better performance data. You're looking for all that, and there's ways to calculate ROI that are based on headcount or repurposing folks. But a lot of times, some of these applications where an operator is loading a 30, 40-pound object all day, every day, at 50 cases a minute, it's not a desirable job. The desired job is to work with the automation and add value. So as you're doing those ROIs, again, the partnership from an integrator that tries to reduce risk in what they're designing for you, so that you can ultimately have a machine in your factory producing ROI.
Yeah, I go right along with that. And also, though, based on what we've seen from customers over the last 3-4 years especially, people in this room you have jobs right now that you cannot find operators to run, at least on a regular basis. So you're in a cycle of training and people leaving or what have you. And so really, years ago, ROI was mainly how many operators can you put in other jobs and how much does that cost, and that's just math. But really, for your business, you have to think about what is the impact to my total throughput of my operation because of the instability of the labor force. At least that's our experience. I see some other heads going up and down here too.
Exactly. I think what we would call is the real cost of ownership. So what is the real cost of that? It's not just the personnel. It is the better throughput. It is less scrap rate. It is, there's robots don't fatigue. People fatigue. So you get that consistency of that. Even material support to that. You maybe go to a just-in-time capability because you have consistency of the process that you didn't have with those other factors. So it's that real cost of ownership. Look at it from that perspective. Like you mentioned, training. You gotta hire somebody. Well, you don't just hire somebody. You could do recruiting. What does that cost you in terms of time? Then what you hire them is that training, and then maybe it's not a job they want to stay in, and they move. You have to start that cycle again. So that's a real cost of ownership, not just that typical old ROI of the headcount.
I have to exclamation point that just the average ROI chart does. It shows like 4 categories: labor, how many shifts are you running, how much are you going to save, and it's irrelevant compared to what actually drives automation. In fact, I've been noting lately that the gap between supply and demand, or for example, a huge backlog of parts, companies who are unable to meet the demand for the products that they're manufacturing, that's what makes automation, that's our sales cycle goes the fastest when that's there. So I guess that would be a big challenge, is to look within your companies or look at your customer base, or where can you not meet the demand from the market, whether that be labor, quality, all the things that you mentioned earlier. But that's the number one driver that I've seen lately.
Great.
So part of the total cost of automation is running it after you've got it up and running. And it's having your workforce able to live with it. How important is ease of use and long-term technical support for running the systems in your businesses?
Yeah, I'll take that one. That's a pretty big element of designing the machine with the operator intent in mind. The person who's got to operate the buttons, fix the jam, understand how to recover to get that machine's throughput numbers there. That's part of the design process. And what a good integrator do, will integrate operator feedback and get different perspectives on how the equipment should operate. Because if it's difficult to use, there's too many screens, or the error recovery isn't clear, it just culturally it's tough to adopt to the machine. And ultimately, somebody has to operate that equipment all day long.
Yeah, agree. One of the things JR does early on is an automation audit with our customers. And part of that audit, our eyes are open to what other automation, if any, do you have in your facility, and the nature of the work you're thinking of doing, how well suited or not are you to do that. And then we also offer along the way, you can have technical people, maintenance staff, manufacturing engineers, operators join at our factory while we're getting ready to run the lines off, or assembly, whatever skills you're concerned that you may not be sufficient to handle this equipment when it comes in. Come alongside us and work together with our team and run the line together, in addition to all the planning that was mentioned earlier.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, I think I speak for all of us. We highly recommend, when you get to that stage, invite your employees to be part of that testing, that final stage testing on our floor, because there may be some nuances we'll identify, and it's better to do those minor changes on our floor than on your floor in your production environment. Once you put it on your floor, you want full production. Your bosses want full production. Your market, your customers are looking for that throughput. So take advantage of working alongside us in a real collaborative effort to get that final solution before it leaves our floor. And your operator is familiar with the equipment, so they're comfortable once it hits the floor. And it gives them a kind of an opportunity to embrace automation as kind of a continuous learning and adoption of that technology.
Not to mention the ROI clock starts long before then, but certainly at that point as well. So,
good point.
I'd like to just add to what Joe said. Many automation machine is in a corner somewhere with a tarp over it because the operators didn't accept it, basically. Made it not work one way or another. That's a real thing. It happens. not because they're afraid necessarily of losing their job or whatever. It's just different. It's new. So I would strongly advise, if you're getting into automation for the first time, engage those operators, as Joe said, help them be part of the journey so that they're internally selling that in your organization, and it's not just an engineer and a supplier coming together to put something new on the floor that nobody really wanted anyway.
So one of the topics that comes up frequently is today's workforce ready for automation? And we've had STEM programs and other things have been implemented in many school districts all over the United States and throughout the world for that matter. How do you feel the students today are at being able to be ready to run automation? Do you think that they're as well prepared as they need to be, or do we still have a gap to close there?
Yeah, a lot of students now are multimodal or multifunctional as far as integrating with software. They can adapt to simulation tools much differently than we did, or a traditional mechanical engineer. A lot of the software is integrated with API calls, and so they're more familiar with that type of stuff. What you're lacking a little bit is the hands-on mechanical aspect of how to build a machine. The machine builder aspect is not it's really not being taught in today's environment. And the students, what we found is they've gravitated towards software and that type of environment. So ease of use of the equipment versus designing and building a custom machine.
Yeah, I can mostly relate to the students that used to live under my roof, and the answer is it varies. It varies by the individual, but agree 100% with what Craig said. That hands-on experience is vital, and some have more of it than others, but I say look for the ones that know how to take apart a dirt bike and put it back together, and you'll do well.
Yeah, I think we're at a fortunate time in our industry, in the growth of the industry, because a lot of it's driving from a software perspective. A lot of the technology advances are coming from software, and for those of you that have children or grandchildren, the software thing is just natural for them. Some of us older ones, we still got the crank on the front of the car to get it started up. So we're really at a good advantage there. So assess the skills of your employees that want to and really interested in learning that technology, and help guide them through it. Now, as far as what I'd like to see more done, there's things like the clusters of places around the country that are universities that are helping drive that educational thing. I'd like to see more of a policy strategy, national policy strategy for that, rather than the clusters. So we really did as a nation. But I think we've made a lot of inroads. A lot of the programs in mechatronics today are offering us that population that is comfortable with the technology coming into the workforce.
I would just add, I think no matter what the trend is today, most of the data says that we'll be, approximately 2 million jobs short, or 2 million people short from the jobs that are being filled. So I think there's some great point about digital first, digital natives that now can move quickly through that side of the technology. But again, there's a huge skills gap. And I would say most importantly, any of you that are assessing automation, know that you want to become more automated. You need to have a talent strategy today to be able to capture some of that talent in the market, because there is demand exceeds supply in that area today, and I think it will for decade at least, maybe more.
So we're here in the Motor City, and Motor City is known for its automobiles, and lots of automation have been in the automotive industry. It's one of the reasons the show is here in the first place even years ago. But are companies too big to automate, and are companies too small to automate? How small is too small from an automation point of view? Because some of these guys maybe first time that they're ever putting automation in their plant. Is there such a thing as too small to take on automation?
I think we really have an advantage today. The ease of use that Greg mentioned also, really a do your own type thing is possible. Collaborative robots, I hate that term, but that technology makes it a lot easier for smaller companies to start to adopt that technology. So I do think that smaller companies can. It's less of a capital investment. Some of the big companies you talk about, the automotive, that's a huge capital investment. The smaller companies are looking small, isolated opportunities, and the technology is available, software, sensors, et cetera, that really talk to each other. The ease of use of all that technology is really giving it the opportunity for those small companies to embrace technology for automation.
Yeah, I would agree. The automotive industry did a number of great things for setting standards, for developing technology, and maybe you're a distribution center and you don't have the years of experience with maintenance or the equipment or dealing with thousands of robots. You need a champion within your organization that's going to learn the technology. And again, you're trying to right size who you're partnering with from the size of the company, the types of systems they do, the applications. You're looking for that partnership that we talked about at the beginning. But ultimately, it could be your first robot experience, could be an application you try to integrate yourself with the power and force limiting technology. The technology is matured enough to a point where you can do that, but it's also best to work with partners to be able to guide you along the way, because you may have a bandwidth or understanding, again, from the risk assessment perspective or project management all the way through.
Good point.
In fact, here at the show, you'll see many of the exhibitors are showing what they call pre-engineered solutions, where there are packages that you can implement those with a fairly low overhead and start into the process and get some experience before you take on more difficult applications. We kind of refer to it as a crawl, walk, run approach. So this is a great place here at the show to see many examples of that, and I encourage you to do so when you get on the floor. So longer term, once the system is up and running and you've got some age on the system, what are the important things from an integrator's perspective do you need to help the customers understand they need to pay attention to keep that equipment running at its peak condition long term?
I'll start. So with all the systems we deliver comes a recommended maintenance intervals and parts, spare parts. That's of course where you want to begin, is what should you do. But also, I recommend working with an integrator that offers field service agreements and people that can come in and are expert in your equipment and can work out a contract with them for a fair price to get preventive maintenance done and other service needs before you break down, because you bought this equipment because you want it to run when it needs to run, and anytime you can help keep that going by preventive maintenance is what you should do, and we can help you with that.
Yeah, I would agree that to describe that, the full life cycle management of your equipment. Earlier today, I was talking about the idea of we do it daily ourselves already. I don't know how many of you change the oil in your car, but maybe you do. But you do make sure you change the oil in your car so that you make sure you get the better life out of the motor of the vehicle. You change the brake pads so that you don't wear out your rotors. Talking about the same thing with the equipment, the maintenance of that equipment, whether you do it yourself or you utilize a company like ours to help you support that. But maintaining that equipment, you'll have a longer life of the equipment, better performance of the equipment, consistent performance of the equipment. So maintaining is really critical. Think about it like your vehicle. Whether you do it yourself or not, you do it. You don't have to change the oil, but I'm pretty sure you'll have challenges with the motor if you don't.
Yeah, I would agree. And a lot of times it's not necessarily the mechanical unit, the arm, or the conveyor system. It's the peripheral equipment, the cable management, the hoses, the wear items that ultimately will bring the machine down. And you want to be proactive about, again, working with somebody who has the capability, capacity to service that equipment and be proactive about it.
Software backups, we've not talked about that yet, but that's a key part of the preventive maintenance activity. So do you look at software backups as part of your process, and when do you do the backups? Early in the process or long term?
I would say this is something that is increasing in the industry. In fact, if you look at contracts, master service agreements, you see more and more about cloud, the use of AI, software backups, all of that, again, digital side. So as systems become more advanced, then the tools required to support them become more advanced. So yeah, I highly recommend, similarly, having a partner, an integration partner that can support you, just like any other preventative maintenance on the digital side as well, on the software side as well.
Yeah, sorry, Joe.
No good.
I'll second that and say at JR Automation we're owned and powered by Hitachi, who's a giant in data management. So we've got you covered from SCADA to the cloud and can help map the journey together with you of where you are today and where you want to go. There's a lot of buzzwords out there about smart factory and things like that. We can help you put handles on that. What does it really mean? Where are you today? Where do you want to go? Chances are it's going to take you longer and cost more than you think to get there, but you might as well know the truth. So let's talk.
Yeah, and I want to add to, so in our industry, we typically, once a project's completed on our floor at FAT, will update documentation, gets on your floor, maybe even some minor tweaks will update documentation. We don't always remember to update the software documentation and the software backup. So be cautious about that, because you got the hard copy and you see, okay, I got the new print with the new layout and that minor change of putting the conveyor in a different location. But did you actually get the update on the software? So to Stu's point, when do you back it up? Often.
Yeah, exactly. And how about videos? You shoot videos of your equipment as you're finishing them off and getting them ready to run out in the field?
Yeah, a lot of times what we'll do is, not from just an application perspective, we'll use different camera systems to help debug the equipment, understand when a switch is in making or what's triggering things. So that technology has been invaluable at the integration of the equipment, but then also typically for the first 90 days of use, understanding what might have happened on third shift with an operator that's not as familiar with the equipment, and then ultimately the end user will take over at some point.
And it's something you might want to make sure your employees understand is your videos are not necessarily to surveil them, but to make sure you're paying attention to the equipment. And they may feel uncomfortable with being in the video, but that's normal work life. And it's important to share that knowledge with them out front, that you're really looking at the best for the company, not looking at them from a performance point of view.
Hey, Stu, with so many folks here that are potentially new to automation, I think could we spend some time talking about some of the gotchas that we've all seen where people have gotten hung up?
Great point.
All right, I'll start the ball rolling. I wrote a couple down. Part variation is a thing. I like to say that if your automation isn't designed for your part variation, you bought yourself a giant part sorter. It'll tell you which ones are out of the spec that you designed for. So part variation is huge. We talked about documentation. It was about software, but a lot of times we get into business, jobs with customers, and their CAD files aren't up to date for their actual parts. So we're designing equipment to CAD that doesn't match parts. That's probably going to cause a problem. So those are a couple. I'll give up the mic to somebody else. And
Well, you bring up a valid point, especially if you're developing a new product. Get together with your automation supplier and try to understand what that product design would look like so it's designed for automation. It's much more challenging to take variations of designs with none of that thought process and then try to figure out an automation system to hit all those variables. If you do it ahead of time, you might have some consistency where we can take advantage of that, helping you so that we make that full automation system much more attainable across the variations of your products because of some feature. We said if you add this feature, it doesn't impact your process, but it makes it easier for us to identify it, position it, and do that subassembly. So work together with your automation supplier in product design if you have that opportunity.
So similar to what Paul is saying, focus on the highest, the majority, the high runners, the 80%, not the 20%, or maybe it's the 95, not the 5. But when you think about scope creep, and maybe this is one of the pitfalls, how a $500,000 project turns into a 1.5, quite frequently it's because you're trying to do everything instead of the majority or the most critical.
Yeah, I would echo that 100%. A lot of times, everyone wants the machine to do 100% of the part variation or product mix, and maybe even the 10% below or the above 90%, they don't really run that often. And you've now built this machine that can handle all of it, creates a layer of complexity, creates a layer of cost, and if they only really need to run the 80% of the product. So yeah, I agree 100%.
yeah, another one that these guys, everybody reminded of is think about the things in your current process today where you count on an operator to use their eyes and their mind and their hands to adjust something. Yes, automation, everybody knows the old saying, with enough time and money, just about everything can be done. But think about that. Many a pitfall have come from, a system is designed and built and we try to run it, and then it's like, oh no, we know we always have to turn that thing a little bit. If it doesn't line up just right, they just reach in and turn it. Well, that wasn't part of the spec, that wasn't anticipated, and it's common knowledge often within your operation. So somehow finding a way to get all of that information on the table and build that in. Another thing to think about is your chances are you're automating to improve your throughput, improve your profit, ultimately grow your business. And so share with your integrator what your growth plans look like, because we can build into your basic platform of your equipment spaces to grow for options or other things down the road. That way your equipment can keep running for a relatively low cost for design and a little bit more material. You can build in space so that you can add stations as your business grows.
Great.
And what we're sharing with you is the process to select really an integrator and why they'd be choosing a partner. So if you're working with someone and they're not doing these types of things, they're not walking your floor, they're not asking those types of questions, they're not watching the operator make that subtle tweak to the part or the component, that's part of the educational process, which will get you the machine that you need for your factory.
Great. So with the time we've got left, there's quite a good crowd here. We'd like to ask if there's any questions that you would like to ask of our panel regarding first-time integration and some of the experiences you're looking for. So we have a microphone. Here we go.
Great panel. So my question, you guys have built great systems, and even though you do everything right, you've got customers where you've been successful and you got ones where it's mothballed. If you were to describe the most important characteristic of a good customer that you're working for, what would it be?
I'll jump at that.
Yeah.
Collaboration. And I mentioned earlier, customers that we've worked with that are really partners together with us and consider us partners in their business. They share things of their vision of their business and what that's going to look like. With that collaboration, we work through, there's some challenges Gordon talked about earlier. You work through the challenges. It's not adversarial. So that collaboration, that commitment to communication, that's why I would say is a key component to having success.
And I would just add across all levels. So we're not, the operator probably knows the process best. That's who we want to be engaged at that level, all the way up to the executive sponsor, not just signing the check, but truly being involved in the process. The more collaboration you have, the more successful it will be, period. That's great.
We look for customers that want to play long ball. This is a tough business. We're inventing custom machinery, sometimes with product that isn't fully solidified yet, and it's a challenge. And anybody that's ever built a house or knows somebody that does, you know that the first time is sometimes challenging. It's going to be a challenge, but select a partner together and say, we're in this for the long haul. We don't often make the money we'd like to make. Sometimes we lose money on the first job, but we go for the long haul because together we learn what each other, the specifications are always there, but there's the gray areas in between what's in the spec that needs to be worked on together, collaboration like a team. Do that.
Yeah, I would agree. Those first projects, that first time working together is you're learning what the behaviors are, what does that collaboration look like. Ultimately, you want that machine to work. And, as part of that relationship, you want people engaged all the way through, all the different types of from project management to software to engaging the mechanical folks or product development people. And as an integrator, the business is tough. What we do, sometimes it's inventing, sometimes it's just integrating, but that first article system is where we're learning to work with one another and create that true partnership that you're talking about.
I'd like to add to that I like to work with companies that are looking at the beginning of their process and not trying to automate something at the end of their process. Get the process under control up front, make sure the parts are under control, perhaps even implement other types of technologies to get it under control, like laser cutting rather than stamping or other things, in order to get the part quality to where we can then eliminate the inconsistencies that drives the automation guys nuts. So I like to start at the very beginning. So great question. Yes, man, back to back.
Thank you, great panel. Quick question, where does digital twin and virtual commissioning fit into your planning process?
Okay. So visual commissioning, it's a big popular topic here lately.
It is a big topic. I'll take a little swing at it. I think the challenge today comes in how do you truly make that digital twin valuable? And I think the word is agentic. That actually starts to describe a digital twin that will autonomously make decisions in a system and actually improve the process of a system. Probably most digital twins that I've seen today are just that. And actually, Joe, you said it well. There's like CGI, you know, there's a, we do it for marketing, and then there's a true digital twin, and then I think this next layer, you know, at actually, you know, driving decisions with that digital twin. So I think the future for it is bright and clear and amazing, but to truly find the value, you know, like anything else, there's a cost associated, and identifying that value, and similar to a system integrator, many of us may not have as much experience there as some of even the startups that are in that space today, but amazing technology, a lot of advancement. Look deeply at the partners that you're considering for a digital twin.
Yeah, and I would add there's animation to understand what conceptually the automation would look like versus validation, which there's a lot of tools out there now for validating your payload, your cycle time, you know, your throughput, your reach. Those have been around for many, many years. That's part of the integrator that's doing their homework and validation ahead of time. But then ultimately, yeah, what value is the digital twin trying to gain for your factory is ultimately what you're asking.
Yeah, I agree with Corwin and Craig 100%. I'll give you a quick success story from back during COVID when we couldn't travel to do installations. We had a large battery manufacturing system on our floor, and it needed to be installed in China, and it just wasn't possible to travel there. So using digital tools, including down to the floor mounting locations, the system's built on our floor, bolted to the floor, down to that level of detail, it was the best we had. We didn't know how it was going to go. Thankfully, with good tools and good people using them, it went flawlessly without any of the builders and installers on our side that normally go with every job to install them. We couldn't do that, but using digital tools, it worked. That's not as complicated as everything with motion and all that, but it's a great example of, with the right tools and the right methods, there can be great success.
I think the key is the right tools for the right job. In some cases, it may be too complicated. In some cases, it's, you know, using a more simplistic approach with the machinery before you get into digital twinning. But digital twinning is clearly on its way in, especially as we have better graphics capabilities, better simulation capabilities. The accuracy of the robots and the systems that are available today are far greater than they've ever been. So it's becoming more of age.
And real data communication too. So finding out on real time what's going on in your production floor and feeding that back and continuous that loop, closing it.
Closed loop, absolutely. We've got time for one more fast one. Time's
Nope,
up.
we're up.
Okay, time's up actually. Thank you very much for everyone's attention. We appreciate you coming, and enjoy Automate 2025.
Thank you.